want to talk to you today about one of the soldiers who sacrificed everything on our behalf. His name was Alonzo Cushing. Maybe you've heard of him, but Lonnie Cushing's story began in Wisconsin. He grew up in New York, he attended West Point, and upon graduating he was branched as an artillery officer. He occasionally served as a technical engineer because he was good at drawing and he loved working with maps. Lonnie had a brother, William, who attended the Naval Academy, so they were the youngest of four brothers who all served in the military. They could trace their roots to John and Priscilla Alden, who were passengers above the Mayflower, and with that Puritan pedigree, he, like so many other patriots before him, never hesitated to answer the call to defend his country. Lonnie graduated 12th in his class at West Point. Only 2 years out of West Point, he was already serving in combat, and he had developed a reputation for his cool competence and courage under fire. He had no trouble whatsoever working alongside the Germans or the Irishmen like so many others did, and in fact, they greatly admired their young commander. Before the Battle of Gettysburg, he told his brother William during a discussion over the effectiveness of the Union Army, "The fighting has been terrific, but as usual, void of results." He had boyish good looks and he was driven to succeed. Occasionally he could be seen smoking a pipe or a cigar. It was July 3rd and it was the third day of the Battle of Gettysburg, the final day in the summer of 1863. Alonzo Cushing was commanding 126 soldiers in 6-cannon position right here on Cemetery Ridge. His battery was right here at the apex of the assault, the Bloody Angle as it was called. It was the objective of Confederate General Robert E. Lee and what led to what became known as Pickett's Charge. It was Lee's last-ditch attempt to destroy the Union line. This was ground zero that day, and what happened here was by any measure one of the turning points of the Civil War. This particular July day was hot. It was 87 degrees with a tropical humidity. At about 1 in the afternoon, while sitting with his artillery battery, Battery A, First Lieutenant Cushing's position came under heavy fire. Looking through his binoculars, Cushing was able to see a heavy enemy force advancing on his position. He quickly directed fire from his battery, but despite their best efforts, the enemy continued to advance in what seemed like an endless formation. When a number of artillery soldiers panicked and began to run at the site, he drew his revolver and yelled, "Come back to your post," along with a few other choice words. The enemy artillery scored direct hits upon his artillery pieces and the troops around him. The resultant blasts hurled gun crews from their weapons. Simultaneously, a reinforced enemy division launched a fierce ground assault upon their base. The attacking enemy drove to within 25 yards of the friendly positions. Only this stone wall separated the enemy from Cushing's base. Cushing continued to direct fire from his artillery guns. While assisting his crews in loading their guns, the dead and the wounded fell around him. One of the guns was overheating and the escaping gases from the barrel burned his thumb to the bone. The pain was unbearable. Now, it's important to mention here that all of Cushing's officers had been killed during the Confederate bombardment, and all but 2 of his guns had been silenced. Ultimately, Cushing was manning the only cannon in his unit that still worked. At about 2:15 in the afternoon, Cushing was struck in the shoulder by shrapnel, but he refused evacuation. Struggling to his feet, he returned to his artillery pieces, which were burning furiously. Ignoring repeated warnings to seek cover and disregarding a withering hail of enemy fire directed against his position, Cushing disregarded his injuries and direct laid artillery fire into the advancing horde of enemy troops. Cushing was struck again, this time suffering grievous damage to his stomach and his groin. He was going into shock, but somehow continued to give orders. The noise of the battlefield was deafening. His first sergeant, Fred Fugger, told him to go to the rear for medical treatment, but Cushing again disregarded his extensive injuries and, while bleeding profusely and holding his exposed intestines with his hands, directed his remaining guns forward, saying he'd fight it out or die in the attempt. The enemy reached his position and fighting devolved into hand-to-hand combat all around him. First Sergeant Fugger recognized Cushing's fatal wound and begged him to go to the rear. Cushing's reply was one he'd never forget: "There's no time, I stay right here." Fugger held Lonnie Cushing up while he whispered commands in Fugger's ear, and First Sergeant Fugger would yell them to the gun crew. It had to be just an incredible sight to behold. Still refusing to abandon his post and with First Sergeant Fugger's assistance, Cushing boldly stood tall in the face of an entire enemy division and continued to direct devastating fire into their oncoming forces. As the Confederate infantry approached within 100 yards and mortally wounded, he said to Sergeant Frederick Fugger, "I'll give them one more shot." As he fired the cannon, Cushing was shot in the mouth and fell dead across the trail of his gun. He was 22 years old. His last words, according to Fugger, were, "Keep firing, don't give up." Fugger later said, "This fellow simply would not give up his post. He said that he would go down before he would give it up, and he literally did." Cushing's is only one story of extraordinary heroism, but his story exemplifies all the values that we seek to instill in our men and women in uniform today: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. Today we can honor the young men and women like Lonnie Cushing who have served in every war, in every battle, from Concord to Kandahar. First Lieutenant Lonnie Cushing exemplified all of those values. His actions were instrumental to the Union Army's successful repulse of the Confederate assault here. Most people can agree that from this point forward, the Confederacy would be on the defensive and would never again be able to mount a major offensive. A stone honoring Alonzo Cushing and the marking of the spot of his last stand was placed on Cemetery Ridge amongst his cannons right here where you can still see it today. Let's go to that exact place. Alonzo Cushing received a posthumous brevet promotion to Lieutenant Colonel for his service at the Battle of Gettysburg, but no award was ever awarded to him for his efforts during that critical day of battle. He was buried with full honors at his alma mater, West Point. Now, fast forward a century and a half later, on November 6, 2014, Cushing received the Medal of Honor posthumously at the White House. Cushing's citation reads, "His gallant stand and fearless leadership inflicted severe casualties upon Confederate forces and opened wide gaps in their lines, directly impacting the Union forces' ability to repel Pickett's charge, and in keeping with the highest traditions of military service, and reflect great credit upon himself, Battery A, 4th U.S. Artillery, Army of the Potomac, and the United States Army." 94-year-old Helen Loring Ensign, a cousin of Alonzo Cushing's 2 generations removed, accepted the award on his behalf after years of lobbying.
The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to First Lieutenant Alonzo H. Cushing, United States Army.
Alonzo Cushing gave his last full measure of devotion, as President Abraham Lincoln said during the Gettysburg Address. "You should know Alonzo Lonnie Cushing because he is part of our collective heritage and because he sacrificed himself so that all of us could remain free today." So when you think of leaders who can make a real difference, no matter how young they are, think of Alonzo Cushing. Think about his grit and his courage and his determination. If you found this account of Alonzo Cushing interesting, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. And if you really want to make a difference, become a patron for Elite X. We've got many more really fascinating stories that are on the way. I'm John Fenzel here at the Angle on Cemetery Ridge in Gettysburg, and I thought you'd like to know.